We are rolling with the vibe here. Beginning of August with another Off the Record on the Rocks. It's good to see you, my good friend.
It's great to see you.
The vibe here in DC has been a little wonky. We've been getting back into the groove here with the show. I've gotten to go to a couple of events downtown, whether Web3 events, whether intelligence community events, and people are feeling oddly like there's this weird juxtaposition of clarification in the markets around where crypto stands, what that's going to mean for the use of blockchain, what that's going to mean for the upgrading of the financial system. And at the same time, you know, the administration seems to be just steamrolling and getting anything and everything they want. And people are kind of accepting it, maybe in a little bit of a scary way of the sun comes up tomorrow, I'm doing okay right now. And overlaying it all like a dark cloud, this AI agent hovering over DC, maybe about to take all of its autonomy away from the city itself. Who knows what they're going to do? Yeah, we can talk about the vibe in DC. Tell me what's going on your side of the country.
You know, it's so well. It's good to see you. It's the dead of summer. It's really the dog days of summer. It's, you know, kids are about to go back to school. I think a lot of the normalcy that we see or we have seen in years past is kind of flipped on its head. So when you talk about the vibe, usually you and I get on in August and talk about what's happening in the world of crypto, the world of AI, the world of Web3. And we joke and we laugh because it's August when the sharks start attacking on the heels of Shark Week in July. The aliens start revisiting us.
Grab a drink. It's time for another episode of Off the Record on the Rocks. Join Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara as we discuss the latest in all things Web3, AI, metaverse, and crypto. Tune out the noise and turn up the signal as we pour ourselves into the future. Better make mine a double.
The radioactive animals, the weather control lasers, all of the stuff that is the crazy news comes out in August usually, and then kind of carries us through until Congress, quote unquote, resumes in September on the second, the day after Labor Day. But I think what we're seeing, like that vibe you're describing, is there's a lot of people excited because so much has been moved forward, but then a lot of scratching of the head and asking like, well, what does it mean? And that August, it usually is that time where we all kind of sit back, is not that time. There is new news hitting. It feels like every hour right now. Like no one is taking a break. Everyone, like you said, that rolling forward, that feel of just barreling forward. There's clarifications coming on the heels every day. There's questions being asked. There's new gigantic Bitcoin and Ethereum buys happening. Like no one's resting. There's barely even any news about aliens. That's how I know everyone's working. The vibe to me is that there's no vacation. Like August is the new start of school and the new start of work. August is no longer that giant month of just get your head in the sand. It's now actually like back to the desk and let's start rocking and rolling.
I think you may be right. In the world of 24/7 markets, you don't get the luxury of taking a break in August. And you're right. The alien news has kind of scratched the surface. But in the meantime, we're getting the substantive stuff. We're getting the PayPal rolling out crypto for merchants. I mean, think about a year ago of how close that felt. And it has yet taken another 12 months. It has now taken this push with the Clarity Act and the Anti-CBDC Act and the Genius Bill in order for the big guys, you know, the JP Morgans of the world, to announce partnerships with Coinbase to offer crypto to mainstream investors. The SEC yesterday specifically talking about liquid staking as not being a security, offering, as you say, even further clarification, you know, even going further than the markets necessarily expected to get at this point in deep August, in the dead of summer. Why would they be doing all of that? What does it all mean? And from my perspective, it means that now is the time where all of those failed attempts in 2021, all the big brand partnerships, we covered it here. Amazon partnered with Avalanche on their token project, right? Everyone was working with the Optimism chain and where that was going to fit into all these brand activations. Even the height of NFTs and Nike issuing, a Web3 project, all that stuff died. It was a security in the eyes. Now we know it's not a security, and we've gotten further clarification. You want to lock up tokens and value. You want to launch your own meme token, whether you're the president of the United States or you're a guitar player busking in the streets. You can now issue a token and have the social community invest in you, fractional ownership
of your guitar, of your hat, and of your dancing shoes.
Tokenize everything. That's the word. And what is it going to take to tokenize everything? We're going to need swarms of AI agents that have their eyeballs on every one of these transactions, whether it's through PayPal, whether it's through Coinbase, JP Morgan, or at your local Starbucks. That AI agent's going to be able to capture all of those transactions, all that data in there, and make sense of it in financial terms. So that's where I'm getting at of these brands are gearing up for September. Big stuff's about to follow.
Yeah, and just building on that, we talk about AI agents, you talk about tokenization. These are two words we've spoken before in the show about the words that are going to be what seep into the common lexicon, the common language. And there's so many things that have come and gone. NFTs, was NFT going to be the thing, a non-fungible token? No, it turned out that just the last letter of that, the T, is the token that people can kind of understand. They're starting to get down to those kind of the brass tack terms. I understand an agent. And, digital twin might be too complicated, right? It's just agent. But as these agents are deployed to work on specific tasks, as the tokenization of products becomes full on legal, it's not even talking in the theoretical, they're just making it so. And that to me is really, it's interesting and shocking considering what we have been speaking about as it pertains to the protection of the American dollar, of what the previous administration would refer to as the de-dollarization of the American dollar, right? We're trying to clamp down on all of these products, all these crypto products, try to control all these things, because if let run rampant, it will de-dollarize. It will somehow draw value away. So how do we rein that in? And the two of the main actors on this stage who haven't been discussed, who are almost like, if you read between the lines, being explicitly left out of the conversation, are our friends over at Visa and MasterCard. There was a time, remember, where the United States, they kind of showed their hand, where they're saying well, we're thinking about rules and regulations as it pertains to credit card companies. Why? Because credit card companies operate in this world where they're creating a Visa dollar or a MasterCard dollar that exists as a future. Think about that. It's conceptually, right? A future version, right? It's considered it's almost like a commodity. It's a derivative. It's not the American dollar. It's a future version that may or may not be paid back. The smart contract of you spending the dollar on your credit card may be paid back in 30 days. But if then don't, interest rate starts to accrue. And then does the United States government get any of that interest that's accrued off those future dollars? No. They have no ability to access that and to control that. And they've said, we're looking at you. The government said, we're looking at these companies because it represents products that aren't specifically within our control. We've always allowed it to happen, but we've never said, yes, you can do this. It just started because it helped grow our economy back in the 60s and 70s, to rewind that, right? So now you're saying, okay, PayPal, Robinhood, eToro. Well, I think Robinhood was the most recent one that was announced. They offer a crypto futures trading platform. Okay. So is that any different than Visa or MasterCard and the way that those future dollars work? No, but yes, because the American government can control those. They can say, we're behind these blockchains. We're going to start buying up majority stake in Ethereum, we're going to start controlling by amassing all these things. They can't buy up a majority stake in MasterCard or Visa Future Dollars. So as I think about those new things, the irony is that the examples of whatever the El Salvadorian business that has to conduct a transaction with the farming company in Iowa will be able to do so seamlessly with no friction via PayPal or via Robinhood, of these things. But guess who's not being spoken about? None of the traditional credit card, none of the debt product infrastructure that the United States and the American people have been built on for like the last 3 to 4 to 5 decades. That is a huge sea change. Yeah. And it's something that now that wrestle control, as you apply those AI agents, is like, there's a scenario in the future where this notion of a credit card, like buying things on a credit card, isn't actually going to exist anymore. You're just going to be buying it through your staked crypto program through PayPal or eToro or Robinhood or wherever the next guy who comes along, who offers a service that looks and feels like a credit card, but isn't because it's on the blockchain.
I think you just hit on something. You used the word staked. You put it in quotes for those listening. And I think that we've talked a lot about education and terminology that's being used. I got served with an exit survey on Coinbase the other day about my understanding of staking. And I went through the questions and I could tell just by the nature of the survey questions that Coinbase themselves must understand that there is a learning curve for the majority of retail investors to understand the concept of self-staking, again, self-custody, but then staking of what the assets that you own and or borrowing against those assets or staking them with some guaranteed yield into the future. You talked about all the payment rails being upgraded and how you're going to be able to conduct these transactions via PayPal or Robinhood. The other one that really, really stuck out to me, and most listeners probably would not have caught this news, although we have talked about Circle and their initial public offering.
Mm-hmm. Circle was the other one I was going to mention that same breath, to be honest.
The original issuer of XRP, the organization behind the ISO 2022 update, which I don't know about you, but I've been getting a lot of alerts saying the banking system is going to be down this weekend. Zelle is going to be down. PayPal outage. Well, guess what? They're installing the new ISO 2022. But the specific announcement that caught my attention is this is from July 28th. So this is now, 6, 7, 8 days ago.
A week, yeah.
Global financial leader FIS, the New York Stock Exchange company FIS. And the reason I know FIS is that when I worked at the credit union, FIS was the provider of all of the front-end banking infrastructure, like the provisioning of accounts, the maintenance of the software, the banking software. People, you think about that, like the bank is a bank, but at the end of the day, they're ones and zeros that show up on a screen that have to be stored in some database. And FIS is the largest provider to every major banking infrastructure that you log into. They're the ones building it. And FIS has announced a new partnership with a subsidiary of Circle to give financial institutions the ability to transact in USDC. This partnership launches on the heels of the new US stablecoin legislation. I mean, we're talking within days of the stablecoin bill getting passed. Here comes Circle and FIS, two now publicly traded companies, ready to walk straight into every financial institution with a working solution for USDC as a stablecoin to operate inside of their existing payment infrastructure. That's huge. I think the retail adoption that comes from that, with people not even realizing that they're operating in stable coins or some kind of cryptocurrency or digital currency. They're not even going to know. And it's going to be facilitated by Circle and FIS.
And the ability to make those transactions seamless or invisible, right? So that's part of what you're describing. I was going to mention Circle in the same breath as PayPal and as eToro and all these guys, is that, maybe the better way to think of it, or the way I think of it, is that there was a certain narrative, a certain rhetoric that's been now going for, I don't even know how long, years, where crypto enthusiasts, people like you, me, etc., people who are acquiring Bitcoin, Ethereum, different things. There's products in the DeFi space when DeFi are still a term people talked about. You don't even hear it hardly ever. The term decentralized finance. Maybe DeFi is that term that flies all of us a little too close to the sun, and the sun being the entire banking infrastructure on which the United States is built today. And we all know and have this sort of, optimistic view that, well, crypto obviously is the solution to breaking down the traditional banking system. And what was that rhetoric? Well, it was, well, why would I want to get some of this crypto? Well, then because you can be your own bank. You can be your own bank. Those are the words, right? Oh, I can? What does that mean? Well, you'll have enough crypto, you'll stake it, then you'll be able to give loans to someone else and collect interest and all these things. And it's kind of everything that you imagine in a game of Monopoly, where it's like, wait, I get to be the bank? I get to be the one who hands the money out to the players? Well, that sounds awesome. Yes, I want to. That sounds great to me. But I feel like that rhetoric had flown so close for so long that the people who are behind these crypto companies realized that is never going to fly, not in the short term. The banking engines are so strong and the revs so high that we need to align ourselves with them. But who are the banks not aligned with at all? The credit card companies. So maybe instead of the rhetoric being like, you're going to be your own bank with crypto, everything I'm seeing is, no, you're steering you into you're going to be able to be your own credit card. You have your own ability to go, you have your own buying power and purchasing power. We're not talking decentralized finance anymore. We're not talking about oh, you need to kind of go off the grid and have no money in the fiat system. It's there's this hybrid view of the world because who's friendly, who plays nice, who doesn't seem like a bank. PayPal doesn't, Circle doesn't, eToro certainly doesn't, Robinhood certainly doesn't. Those two are more like stock market exchange programs, and the next guys who come along who are just these average everyday apps that allow you to kind of go in and to transact. Suddenly, I'm actually buying and paying for all those things I would normally do on Amazon, let's say, but I'm linking my PayPal account. I'm not actually linking my Visa or my MasterCard. I'm starting to link various products that are not explicitly tied to anything except crypto or, again, these private names, which are safe as far as the government's concerned, because as long as the government owns and manages the crypto legislation, then they effectively control the entire mechanism in which we can continue our retail spending efforts. And we're not decentralizing your finance at all. In fact, we're offering you way more futures and way more derivatives and way more products that make your money get bigger so you can buy more stuff on Amazon. Everybody wins.
I want to take that thread and pull it all the way to the administration issuing Strengthening American Leadership in Digital Financial Technology. This was the report issued by David Sachs and crew in the days following the crypto legislation.
It's a meaty one.
This was a 166-page PDF dropped on whitehouse.gov outlining the full working group, including David Sachs, Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, and a whole bunch of Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, Stephen Miller, Homeland Security Advisor. You name all these guys here in D.C. Carolyn Pham, Acting Chairman of the Community Futures Trading Commission. The one big takeaway for me out of this report is that in 166 pages, in the days following the Clarity Act and the Genius Bill, there is nothing in the report about the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. And rewind not more than 4 or 5 months ago, after Trump took office, after the big crypto week, after I think J.D. Vance spoke at the Bitcoin conference, after there was all this hype about, Michael Saylor entering the chat and has been on a buying tear since then, but nothing in this report that outlines exactly what is going to be happening with this Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. I want to hear your take. I've got a hypothesis, but what's your take on the report?
My hot take is that someone realized that if they keep talking about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, that everyone's going to want to start loading up on Bitcoin. And they kind of got themselves into a spot where they were able to argue away a little of like, well, what else should be in the Bitcoin strategic reserve? Should we have XRP in there? Because I know that guy. How about Solana? He was sitting next to Bezos. How about, these extra tokens, these things, which of course got everyone saying, well, wait a second. What do you mean? What's going to be in here? Meanwhile, Strategy changes its name from MicroStrategy to Strategy and calls itself a Bitcoin Treasury Company, a BTC. So they released this gigantic report, which creates, I think, a massive amount of FUD. Maybe not true FUD in the fear, uncertainty, and doubt description of FUD, but a lot of noise to cover up the signal, which to me was, okay, the two major takeaways. Number one, we're not going to say anything about Bitcoin or by name or strategic reserve by name. And we're going to spend multiple pages in multiple sections accusing and bashing the previous administration's legislation and handling, and really narrowing in on this notion of the choke point, Operation Choke Point, which was the way that the previous administration was going to squeeze these different companies. So to me, it felt like a big smoke screen of like, hey, remember when we put all this legislation through? Here's our playbook, but it actually is something that is completely, it's a huge distraction, a huge red herring in my mind. I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. That it's likely happening. It's these combination of these ETFs, these NFT treasuries that are these NFT ETFs that are being spun out, all these derivative products. It goes back to what you were just talking about. There's so far that you can remix the remix of these financial products that it's how far out do you go, and which of those assets make their way into America's digital asset reserve. It likely will be. And we talked about this even 4 or 5 months ago of like, there's going to be tiers of it, right? Just like gold and silver and copper reserves and all these other commodities. There's going to be levels. There's going to be Bitcoin, kind of pure store of value. And then there will be tiered levels and how it gets used and how it gets staked and how it gets used as credit for what? Like Solana being used as credit for maybe the government agencies, internal operations, or right? Like that's a great way to think about of the way those things get packaged, the baskets of goods that will get rolled into these different financial products ultimately. And my other thought is they probably need some other competition in terms of who's going to custody America's digital asset reserves, right? Michael Saylor is going to be the most logical one. Coinbase, maybe second in line. Who else? Who are these other organizations that are going to literally be able to hold and custody, have both sides of the key, right? Like who's going to have control and how that gets facilitated? And I think you're going to need more than the two I named.
Well, and to your point, what you just said is the diversification of the custodians is a model that I think emulates the Federal Reserve more or less, right? You don't want to have one guy. Like Michael Saylor can't be the only guy. So then you need some number more than one, but probably some number, but probably some number less than 100, right? You don't need it to be so big and unmanageable. But that's, I think what you're going is right. Is that, but I guess my question then to you is the bar to entry purely based on how much cash you have on hand right now to acquire said cryptocurrency? Is that what we're basically saying? That, hey, it's like there's a call to
Federal Reserve work. Didn't Roosevelt and these big
wigs,
real estate conglomerates? Isn't that how they got seats on the Federal Reserve Board in the first place? The Rockefellers, like, isn't that how it happened? These guys had all the money.
They had the cash, but they also had the network and the connections. So I guess my question is to that point. I mean, obviously, history repeats itself. We just saw that Meta Planet, which we should clarify is not at all associated with Meta, the company. It's currently run by Zuckerberg, just made a $2 billion buy a little north of 2 billion, right? I can't remember the exact number. Pull up the article, but it made them in that instant the 7th largest holder of, in this case specifically, Bitcoin in the world. So pull together $2 billion. So then, not to be outdone, because clearly there's a race going on here. It's not clear that just because you have money allows you a seat at the table, right? So not to be outdone, Michael Saylor, who runs strategy, I want to say he just opened up another convertible note where they're selling shares. Did you read this? They just did another convertible note thing where you can basically, he's drawing another multiple billions off of existing shareholders for the purpose of acquiring more Bitcoin. So now they're like tripling, quadrupling down using debt products on different balance sheets to just amass more. And it's not just Bitcoin. There's companies amassing Ethereum, amassing to effectively maybe look like the right partner, so that when the United States says, okay, we need more than one, maybe we need 7, or let's pick whatever the Fed Reserve model is, 7 or 9. It's probably some odd number just so they have voting, there's no voting discrepancies. But there's probably going to be some number, 3, 5, 7, 9 companies. But who will be allowed to do that? Because Meta Planet is Japanese owned. Right. And that is a Japanese owned company going to be allowed at the table? Now, you talk about the Rockefellers, ironically, Japan owns Rockefeller Center. Japan owns all of Kentucky bourbon. So maybe if you own the Rockefeller Center and you own Kentucky bourbon, you like ice skating and drinking that sweet brown liquor in New York, then maybe it's okay that they're backing the Federal Reserve or the digital Federal Reserve, this new Bitcoin treasury. Or will the United States say, no, this is America first, which is the rhetoric that comes out of the current administration. I'm just trying to get that. Where is that line going to be? Is it the money? Is it the global connections? Is it both? Like, how do you see this sort of thing playing out? Because I'm trying to reconcile the geographic and global kind of political challenges with the underlying need to want to control as much cryptocurrency as possible.
I mean, I feel like we talked about this at some point when we were covering DAOs, and we were talking about decentralized autonomous organizations and how states could be run more efficiently if taxpayer funding kind of, went into a single pool and was dispersed via smart contracts. And then we started to talk about, but what about foreign interest and foreign ownership over real world assets? In your case, you're talking about real estate or land, even like
or Pokemon cards,
anything, any real world asset, anything that exists that can be physically here in the United States, but owned by a foreign country or just an individual, a non-U.S. citizen. I do think that at least is going to be the initial reaction, this isolationist protectionism around U.S., around the custodians of a U.S. digital asset reserve. They're effectively going to have to go through KYC at the federal government level, No,
the thing about that is that KYC, is that know your customer, or is that KYA, know your agent?
Know your financial agent of whoever is going to be controlling all these assets. Isn't that kind of how BlackRock has operated for the last 100 years of buying up, 51% ownership in specific companies on the public markets in order to have controlling stakes in these companies, in order to have control without it being overt, when it's just a monetary control, which you can exert a lot of power in that way. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the back half here, as we head into the final quarter of 2025, as the political sphere kind of is going to take its final shape of like what it's going to look like going into 2026, all these tariffs, all these international negotiations that are happening. Make no doubt, a lot of them are about exactly this. What assets do you own in the U.S.? What are you willing to invest in? What manufacturing are you willing to move here? And how much Bitcoin and Ethereum are you willing to buy from MicroStrategy over the next 10 years when we sell it to you at a 10%, 20% premium? so that you can start building up your strategic reserve. And they're making 5 and 10-year deals about how this money is going to move, what's going to get built, what trade is going to happen, what products are going to get bought and sold. And when I say products, I'm not just talking about physical goods, but which of these financial instruments, as Coinbase marches its way into Mexico and into Italy and across the UK, I've seen Coinbase popping up everywhere. Well, great. They're a U.S. company that's going to be advancing the use of crypto across the globe. I think that's good ultimately for the crypto markets and for Coinbase and likely for American interests as well.
Yeah, and maybe as you described that too, you almost kind of, now there's a pedestrian read that I guess I have on it, which is like BlackRock, like you said, we all know these guys go into countries. BlackRock is in some ways aligned with the interests of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, with the World Bank, with the idea of going back to those old notions of the economic hitmen, people who come from large American interests and then are able to buy up majority share in foreign in companies, whether it's United Fruit from way back all the way forward, and effectively have these little bastions, these little beachheads of American influence in foreign countries through their companies. So similarly, if you're Metaplanet in Japan and maybe you already know, well, one of two ways, either way you go, you win, right? There's going to be a fork in the road. Either you're going to be such a massive holder of crypto that the world can't ignore you. So you just bought yourself the seat at the table, at least to have a conversation. And even if they turn you away and say, so sorry, we're nationalists all the way and Bitcoin's an American thing, sorry, then at least you're going away with a large tranche of that really rare and hard to find thing. And so therefore we'll be able to be powerful, at least as someone who can maneuver on the playing board. But let's just take this one step further, because I was thinking again about Tether. We talked about Tether and, we talked about USDC and Tether owns, what the number? It was that the 5th most treasury bonds of any country in the world is owned by this company. And what's interesting about Tether, because everyone has this idea that Tether is an American thing, and it isn't. I want to say it's most recently based out of El Salvador, which of course is very interesting when you consider that the
27 billion in U.S. Treasury securities, surpassing the holdings of several sovereign nations, including Germany. They're the 18th largest holder globally in Treasury bonds.
And they're in El Salvador. And who else is in El Salvador? A guy named Bukele. And what else is happening in El Salvador? Well, they're mining Bitcoin by hydropower off of volcanoes, hydrovolcanic. There's all these interconnected players, but Tether is spoken about in the same breath as USDC is spoken about as, well, these are our friends because they're aligning a one-to-one digital twin to the American dollar. And as long as you're pegging to that, as long as you're saying, hey, I run this thing that is a cryptocurrency. Okay, well, what's the value of it? Oh, it's $1, 1-to-1. Then everyone goes, oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's pegged to the dollar. Okay, let them in the door. It makes sense. It's steering right into our whole world. So it'll be interesting to see, can companies like Metaplanet, can companies like Tether, can companies that are not Michael Saylor, who's the American who's amassing Bitcoin, get seats at the table? Or is Michael Saylor counting on the fact that between now and the end of 2028, he needs to keep driving his wedge so deep in the American wood that when it splits and the new administration comes in and whatever bills and rights and protections they've added will hold him as the moat will be dug so wide around his castle that no one can cross it? Or will the United States government and all the powers that be, because the rotunda was full of technologists, and you better believe Andreessen Horowitz and Jeff Bezos and Zuckerberg, their entire business plan relies on globalization. It does not rely on 300 million-ish American customers. It's billions of customers. So there's going to be this, I think there's these two factors that are at odds with one another. They're going to have to find that way to kind of interlock and say, yes, we are going to pool and mass all of the power of the crypto that's out there, regardless of what kind of country it is. Of course, it's not, a sanctioned country, but bringing Japan back in, bringing all the Asian countries back in, the Hong Kong exchanges, bringing Europe back in, all these countries to actually have a seat at the table is going to be, I think, the path to America becoming the dominant force in this, not the isolationism, which is what we're seeing in the rhetoric today.
Yeah. And I think maybe one plays out in the short term with a longer term of like even the world has to come on chain. We'll have to see as things continue to shake out here in the summer. Looking ahead at the Sturgeon Moon.
Oh.
I am excited about these little 5% dips in the market. ETH kind of, Bitcoin dominance is waning a little bit. That is usually the signal for altcoins to begin the heating up. We've kind of tested the waters a few times over the last 4 to 6 weeks, but we have not seen what I think will be a final leg up in what has ultimately been a bull market for the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
And I think that, not financial advice, but now's the time to get on that train, because by the time you start asking people where to buy Bitcoin, it's going to be too late. You're already late.
Yeah, you're on it. I mean, look, Sturgeon Moon guys, this is as financial of advice as you want to make it. But when Bitcoin pumps a little bit and dips a little bit, look at everything else. And right now, Ethereum might be popping towards 4,000, towards its own all-time high. Could be a good opportunity to take some profits off the table and wait to pile back in on Bitcoin and other things. I mean, certainly every single character we've just mentioned on this stage is doing the exact same thing. Last full moon, we saw Bitcoin all-time high. What Sturgeon Moon is in 3 days, is that right? All right, everyone keep your eyes to the heavens and let's make sure that your bags are packed, because it's going to be a wild ride into September.
All right, sir. We'll do it again in a couple weeks.
Good talking to you.
Peace.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Off the Record, On the Rocks. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See you next time for more news and all things crypto and Web3.